It's Steve here again from the Studio One Soapbox. In today's video, I want to take a look at trying to achieve a real good guitar tone by simply using a software package, most notably in this case, the Empire package that comes free with Presonus. Let's take a quick look at it here. There it is in all its glory. Not too bad at all as far as guitar simulation packages go. No better or worse than anything else. So really what I want to get at is you are a bedroom producer specifically, and either through economics and cost, either through availability, or simply due to the loudness factor of making up a real tube guitar amp, say a 30, 50 or 100 watt amp, and we're trying to make that up. Well, to hit that sweet spot on a tube amp, you really need to crank those things up, and the volume and loudness of those things would just be impossible to use when you have neighbours, other family members around you, in close proximity, or even a nice cat or dog. So specifically this is based at those of us who have to use software to try and get some guitar tones recorded, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I don't want to open up the debate against these simulations against the real deal. You can indeed get really good tones with software packages. If people only realize how many guitar tones on famous tracks and bass guitar tones on famous tracks that have been created by using the SansAmp plugin that comes with Pro Tools, I think they would just be absolutely gobsmacked considering the amount of equipment and classic amplifiers that are around, that the tone for whatever reason was declared unusable and they just dialed it in using that plugin called SansAmp. So, you know, the arguments for and against are obviously valid. There is differences, but what I'm saying is you can get close enough. So I just want to show a couple of ideas how to get a bit closer to that real tone, if at all possible. It's very debatable and very subjective. One tone that a person loves would be totally hated by someone else. Our ears are just so subjective when it comes to guitar tone, and we all love something different. But let's try and head down the middle of the road and just see if we can improve things and try to get a good tone when we're trying to create some guitar tracks with a software package only, specifically based towards your bedroom producer. So first up, I want to show the difference between, we have a basic setup here. What I've used is a Mexican square Strat. I've plugged it into a little Behringer 2-input audio device. It has a Midas preamp with an XLR/TRS input, and it has just a straightforward 1/4" jack input for instruments. So I just want to show the difference between using those two inputs. So first up we have the 1/4" jack, and we'll just use a clean tone just to demonstrate that. Here we go. Okay, it's a bit scratchy, not much life to it. Let's try going into the TRS 1/4" input on the Midas preamp. So let's flick across to that. As you can hear, a lot more bassiness, all that scratchiness is taken out. It's added some warmth and definitely rolled off those high frequencies, and it's the high frequencies that give the game away. No matter what software package you use, those upper frequencies are always the thing that gives the game away that you have indeed used some sort of simulation package to get your guitar tone. So let me just flick quickly between the two so you can hear the difference even just between the inputs. So this is the 1/4" input on this track, and on this clean track is the TRS input on the Midas preamp. It's an XLR TRS. You can plug in a microphone or you can plug in a 1/4" jack into the same socket. But Behringer have fitted a nice Midas preamp, which I must say for the price of this thing is very good indeed. So let's just hear the difference between those two inputs alone. Quarter-inch jack first, and I'll just flick between them. Midas preamp, quarter-inch jack. So I think you can hear there is a massive difference between those two. The quarter-inch jack input is very scratchy, not much life to it, and the Midas preamp using the guitar through that seems to have rolled off all those annoying upper frequencies and added a lot of warmth and depth to the thing. Again, tone is very subjective. You might prefer the quarter-inch input, this one, over the Midas preamp, that one. Again, if you think about how things are recorded in the real world, usually maybe an SM57 up on the grill of the cabinet, and it's always plugged in to a top quality preamp, whether that be a Neve, maybe an API, or straight into a console preamp. It's always going that direction. So if we can plug our guitar into a preamp on our little audio interface, are we not mimicking the same thing? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to mimic how things are done in the real world. So you can see even the inputs alone are completely different and can give you different tones. So you might try either or either, depending on what tone you're trying to create and how it's going to sit within your mix. So now let's just open up Ampere and we'll take a look at using that to try and create some better tones. The cabinet that comes free with the software, the inbuilt one, which I've bounced out to this track, Ampere Cab. And secondly, what I've done is, if we go here, scroll down to User Cabinet, I've added in an own hammer cabinet impulse response. Now, how do you do that? Well, basically, it's just a drag and drop thing. Say, for instance, I want to add a little room. I could grab this one, which is a room mic, and you simply grab it, drop it on, and there's it installed as mic B. So we can click Edit Mic, and there is mic B. I can control how far it is away from the cabinet, how close it is, and I can split the difference between the A and the B mic and get an overall balance between the two. So if we come out of that, just X that off. So in this case, what I've done is, firstly, recorded a track using the inbuilt cabinet, which is this one here. Let's have a listen to that. And this is the clean DI. This would have been the Midas one. And this is using Ampere with these settings. Not bad at all. So secondly then, to improve the sound even a little bit further, we can use third-party cabinet impulse responses. So with Ampere, we click on here, and if we scroll to the bottom where it says User Cabinet, then we can throw in our impulse response as I showed. In this case, it's an own hammer one, just a 57 mic on the cabinet, I think, and that has been bounced out to this track here. So I'm going to play you the original cabinet against the own hammer cabinet impulse response and let you hear the difference between those. Here we go. Firstly, the Ampere built-in cabinet. And now the own hammer. Empire cabinet. Own hammer. Okay, so you get the idea. The own hammer is definitely a little more livelier, a bit more life to it. The original cabinet isn't bad. Again, tone is subjective. You may prefer the inbuilt cabinet. There is no right nor wrong to this, but we're trying to get closer to that real tone, and so I've used the Midas preamp. I've selected that as my favorite. Again, I've used this own hammer cabinet impulse response. I prefer that. I'm still heading towards the general direction of trying to nail down a real good guitar tone, something that would fool someone into thinking that I'd actually mic'd up a tube amplifier, if that is at all possible, and I believe it actually is. So next up, what I've done here, moving along, is I've went for a bit more of a dirty tone, a bit more of a rock tone. In the first instance, again, I used, I think it was a Legacy cabinet. And in the second instance, I've used my own cabinet, which is a Marshall 4x12 cabinet with a 57 on it. Again, an own hammer impulse response. So first up, we have the inbuilt cabinet. So for the inbuilt cabinet, that's not bad at all. Let's play that again. So let's try the own hammer impulse response on this channel. Inbuilt cabinet. Own hammer. Empire. So that is again a Mexican square strat, mimicking going through a Marshall 4x12 cabinet, an inbuilt one on this track from Empire, and an own hammer response. Now, another thing when we're trying to get a little bit closer again is remembering how a real cabinet operates. There is a certain dip in the mids with all cabinets. Marshall cabinets aren't so much as a Fender or a Vox AC30. So if we try to mimic that as well, here I've just opened up an EQ, and cabinets really don't give us anything below 75 Hertz, and 5 Hertz and over, there's very little information there as well. So the speaker itself goes from about 75 Hertz up to about 5 kilohertz. So if we try to mimic that range, also try to mimic the dip, we're around 449 Hertz. We've just taken out 3 dB, and as you can see, the shoulders of our curve are hitting around 2K in the upper frequencies and about 100 Hertz in the lower frequencies. So if we try to mimic this curve to further mimic how an actual speaker in a cabinet would operate, let's see if we can improve the sound here. And we'll just use the own hammer cabinet impulse response as we've moved along. So let's turn this EQ on and let's have a listen to that. And I'll flick the EQ in and out as we go along. Take the EQ off. back in. And back out. So you may prefer the original. Again, it's all what your ears are listening to. But as we're trying to head towards that route of trying to get something that sounds like the real deal, again, you know, you can mess around with this curve that would be mimicking how a speaker can actually react within a cabinet. Also, what I would do, I could drop in a high pass filter around 75 hertz to mimic how these speakers can't really produce anything below that. And as I say, in the upper frequencies, I have a low pass filter around 5 kilohertz, trying to mimic that the upper range is kind of cut off there as well. So let's play that. Turn the EQ in. Now, what also I have found is this particular Mexican Square Strat has a very annoying frequency around 2.5 to 2.8 kilohertz. So what I've done here, I've used the free Nova plugin from TDK, is it? TDR Tokyo. And I'm using this as a dynamic EQ. So every time that note sounds, it'll dip it out. And I'm dipping it out around maybe 2-3 dB in reality. I've also added in a third of the original tone, so I'm not really affecting it too much, but just enough to dip out that annoying frequency whenever it sounds. So let's turn that on as well. So here we go. Let's listen to this. So, what I would suggest is mess around with this curve. Remember, 75 hertz and below, there's virtually nothing coming out of that speaker. 5 kilohertz and above, again, virtually nothing coming out from the speaker. It just can't reproduce that sound. And we've taken out and tried to mimic the mid dip as well. Now, around 400, 450 hertz in this case, trying to mimic a Fender amplifier. Now, you might say to yourself, doesn't a cabinet impulse response, especially third-party ones, already mimic this stuff? Well, yes and no. In fact, yes, they do to begin with, but if you start adding further processing, say you start adding EQ after ampere, say we went to... we added an EQ and we started adding something around 1K, giving it a little boost, and maybe dropping off some of the lows and stuff like that. Now we're alternating what that original cabinet response was and the sound that we got from it. And so you might need to, you know, reintroduce the proper curve later down the line. It's all about what your ears hear, not about what your eyes see. So listen for the tone you're creating and be subjective on it. You know, if you think there's something wrong with it, try and fix it. And we're just trying to mimic, as speakers work in cabinets here, with the DMG audio. I must say, this is a fine EQ. Definitely go and have a look at it. Also in this case, I know for a fact that this cheap guitar has a very annoying resonant scratchy tone, around 2.5 to 2.8 kilohertz, and so I'm just dipping out that little scratchy tone every time it sounds, just trying to get rid of those annoying upper frequencies that give the game away. So this would be my final tone. So again, I might need to mess around with that a bit more. It depends on the track. I mean, listening to this in solo without other instruments, drums, bass guitars and other things being involved, you know, it's hard to say where the tone would actually work that I've created, but this is the beauty of creating guitar tone. You would do the exact same thing in the studio. You could be messing around with your guitar amp for ages, maybe messing around with pedals, and most importantly, in the real world, the microphones used, and they'll be getting moved around all over the place, just trying to get the balance and trying to capture that tone that the guitarist has in his head. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. And I have seen, you know, beautiful tube amplifiers, beautiful microphones, everything set up, and when it came to the mix itself, the tone just didn't fit, and a DI had been taken and it was run through a Sans amp in Pro Tools, a tone was created and it worked perfectly for the song. So there you go, dragging all your equipment to the studio thinking you're going to create this killer tone that you've got, and well, it just didn't work and it was replaced by a little piece of software. So don't knock these software simulators, they do have validity. And if we take it up to the pinnacle of that, which would be a camphor or Axe-Fx, but most notably camphor is the thing that I've heard going. You know, I've seen purists who would say that there is nothing like a tube amplifier being mic'd up, being totally fooled by a camphor. In fact, choosing the tone of the camphor over the original. So it shows you that technology has come on leaps and bounds, and things are so much better than what they were. Let's do a quick recap before we end this little video. Firstly, we had a little Behringer to input. It had a 1/4 inch jack, which we tried first, and then we tried plugging our guitar into the Midas preamp that's on it through the TRS input, and we found that definitely had a bit more life. So let's mute that a second. Let's listen to this. That was the 1/4 inch jack. And this was the Midas preamp. Turn that off. So straight away, massive difference. Then next up, what we did was we used the built-in software Ampere, and we had its original legacy cabinet, the inbuilt one, which was this channel, and then I used, down to user cabinet, and used a known hammer impulse response on this track. So let's hear those two quickly again, refresh our memory. So that was the Ampere inbuilt cabinet, and then this was the own hammer cabinet. Then to bring that along a little further, what I did was try to mimic a Fender cabinet. So in this case, nothing below 75 Hz is really produced by the speaker. Nothing above 5 kHz is pretty much produced by that speaker. And it has a mid-frequency dip. I've dipped out about -3 around 400 Hz and just queued it up so that the shoulders of the dip are hitting at 2K and 100 Hz. And this is what that sounds like. Take it off. Bring it back in. lastly, I've downloaded this TDR, I think it's TDR or TDK Nova free plugin. Definitely go and have a look at that. It's free of charge. And I know that there's a little Mexican square strat has a very annoying frequency around 2.5 to 2.8 hertz. And so I've set this dynamic EQ up so that it just dips that out for me whenever that sounds. So add that in. Let's hear that. And there we go. So some tips to try, try the different inputs on your audio interface, especially if it says there's an instrument input. Try plugging it into a preamp input, a TRS, maybe an XLR TRS input, and see if you can put the 1/4" jack in there. You maybe be able to add a bit more warmth and ease off those upper frequencies, which are the annoying frequencies that give the game away that you've used a piece of software. So these are just some ideas. I'm not saying that I've created these two perfect tones that sound exactly like the real thing, but what I'm saying is we're using a couple of these methods trying to get down that way. I would say definitely without doubt, if you're not using third-party cabinet impulse responses, either from Redwires, Rosen Digital, or Own Hammer, you're definitely losing out, because a lot of guitarists would agree 2/3 of your tone is coming from the cabinet speaker. That's the thing that's mic'd up, and wouldn't it be prudent to try and get as close to that as possible? And these impulse responses are definitely a massive improvement over the free ones that come with many bits of software. So definitely get into that. If you go to any of their websites, I think they all have free demo ones you can download, and you only need one to try it. You don't need thousands and thousands of these things, just a couple of choice ones so that you can mimic maybe famous amplifiers or famous cabinets, that type of thing. So you could try that. Thanks for joining me. I hope you did find this useful. I'm sorry if I've waffled on a bit too much in this one. I do apologise. So happy mixing. Hope you found it useful, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you.